Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. As always, want to thank everybody for their support that's supporting us over on Patreon. You make all this possible.
You absolutely make it possible, and we are so grateful.
We definitely are. And we're grateful for one of our Patreons, Modern Refugee. We had a good discussion with him. Was it earlier this week or was it last week?
I think it was last week, but we really appreciate him.
Yeah, he is an awesome guy. I liked him immediately. Right off the bat, there was a connection. He's a very spiritual person, but his channel really is all about practicality. And, he really does a great job of getting you guys practically ready for what can come. I think, again, we want to focus more on the spiritual and the esoteric, and he is the man when it comes to, from things like what did our forefathers do? What can we learn from our maybe grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, implement it today, as well as he scours the internet. He does so much work in putting together ways to help us. Really, he's got a big heart. He's a great guy. We both really feel strongly about Fred's contributions in these times. And this I thought was just fabulous. I thought this was so well put together. It is his bleep hitting the fan scenario, Red Dawn and Invasion. What does he think it would look like? And he does a great job explaining how he put this together, pieced this together. And he does this little, it's just great. He does this little scenario where he's giving you an update, and we're months in to what is the Red Dawn invasion. What does it look like? What does it look like for the average person who's not on the battlefield, but just your life has been totally turned upside down? I just can't say enough about how good this was.
It was a lot of fun, and it gives people ideas and practical ideas too. Like, what do you use if something happens and none of us are really truly ready? I at least, though we're not gazillionaires, so we can't be ready for everything that's going to hit the fan. But he goes over scenarios like what do you do? How do you use the stuff that you do have on hand? How do you use things, and how do you coordinate things when things are really, really rocky? You sort of figure things out, but he has a really nice idea of how things are going to go. So maybe you can prepare a little bit more now. It's really quite a blessing.
So I'll put the link, as always. Again, his channel is Modern Refugee. And, he has reached a lot of people. He has 29,000 subscribers. So please do subscribe if you haven't yet. Now, this is a little different, this video, because I wanted to just touch on some anomalous items that just show you how far off our whole picture. If we are just going by what they tell us in the history books again, we're really in the dark. Of course, they'll always write things to fact checkers say these are not really human footprints right next to the dinosaurs' footprints in Texas. If you haven't seen this, you have footprint of something pretty good size, maybe a T-Rex, and you have a human. It looks like a human footprint right on top of it. Basically, in the same strata, it would make you think that the human came up to footprints of a dinosaur and was, which way did he go now? I don't want to go that way. Taking a peek, standing right there on top of the dinosaur footprint. And again, this is in Texas. There's a lot of anomalous things in Texas. I keep getting the feel there's inner earth entrances over there in Texas. as well. There's a stone wall that doesn't really have a good logical explanation, that was unburied quite a bit under the ground, again, showing that no, history is not what you think it is.
You know, and I'm looking at this thinking, right now, humans, we have these creatures called horses, these 1,000-pound, 1,500-pound creatures that if you're a good trainer and you understand them, you can really have total and complete command over them, and you have a partnership with your horse. That's kind of what I see it as. It's more of a partnership. I wonder if this guy was leading this guy around in a halter.
Well, let us share, because what I want to do is share the info that we have received whenever that's applicable to one of these topics. So what we have gotten is, yes, dinosaurs are not exactly what we were told. In fact, to reptilians, some dinosaurs were pets, others were used for sport, others were used as a herd, literally like food, like we have cows and sheep and goats, etc. Well, yeah, that's what dinosaurs were also used for. I mean, think about how many Bronto burgers you could get out of a brontosaurus.
Well, you could probably get quite a few.
Yeah, and was there anything you wanted to elaborate on from what you got from the guides as far as the whole, what was the purpose of dinosaurs?
Well, just kind of look at the world that we have now and look at all the creatures that roam the earth now that we have bred and we have utilized for food sources and to help us work. Apply that to a different time, and I don't think that we are too far off.
Okay. On that note, I'm going to jump to this and tie them together. So we see these artifacts. You see this right here, this metal artifact. You see this stone. If you wanted to twist it, you could say, well, that's a butterfly, or maybe that's somebody's representation of some insect. But it's very easy to see that this could be a representation of a ship. This is pretty darn easy to see that this looks like somebody riding in a rocket or some sort of ship. These look very much kind of like some grayish type of ETs. And certainly when we see this is your classic flying saucer. Now, we do have flying saucer depictions throughout all ages. They go back so far in time. As you can see, some of these are thousands and thousands of years old. This one right here, Stone Temple Pilots, the band, took their name from some of these enigmatic carvings and paintings and depictions of what look like Mesoamericans riding rockets or ships. Well, the reality is, look at this. How about this one? And this one, that's certainly saucerish. They go on and on and on. There's so many of these depictions. It's really, really wild. That's so clear to see it. It's machinery. It looks like it's machinery. Here's another depiction. Look at this guy with the big head. We've uncovered skulls a lot like this. And you got classic flying saucers going back, 2,000-3,000 years and more. Not hard to see, very easy to envision. Look at these masks. And the reason why I bring this up next to the dinosaurs is because earlier this week, I got a vision from the guides, because how often do we go through these resets? How often do we go through completely new civilizations made up of bits and pieces of the last civilization with brand new elements? If you've ever seen the movie Dark City, I think that gives you an interesting scenario where these aliens are taking humans, and in one scene they take a poor couple and they make them go to sleep, And I think, again, when they do that in the movie, they say sleep, and the humans just automatically sleep, except for this one guy who's awakened. And he's like what we are when we're out of the Kali Yuga, and we have activated light bodies, and we're no longer easily controllable. They tell him to sleep, he doesn't sleep. And in fact, he can do all that they do. But they take a poor couple, they move them into a new scenario, they change the entire structure of this city around them, put them in a mansion, because they want to understand what makes the soul tick. You can take a human from one situation to another. It's not the vehicle, it's the soul. And the soul, yes, the vehicle offers certain opportunities, but it's the soul. And so the whole premise of the movie is that they're analyzing humans and putting them through all different scenarios to see their reactions and to learn from it. Now, the dark control system that we're under, perhaps does do that, as well as worse things, and utilizing humans more like, again, that cattle and energy resource. But think about all the anomalous items that we have seen, all these things that do not fit. We've talked about the fact that the moon that we see is a hologram. It is a projection on a blank screen of a 4D reality. So the moon that we see, I saw it once, and so many people have said this, that they've seen it too, go blank, all of a sudden featureless, craterless, just like a white screen. But it was there, but it was like a white screen. And then it came back on. And I was with somebody, we both saw it at the same time, and looked at each other like, are we going crazy? No, because it's always been a projection. And, that Operation Bluebeam has always been in effect, as the sky that we see is a hologram, and it is distorting and having issues with the technology. The past is not what they tell us. When you look at the Great Wall of China, it's not really the Great Wall of China. There's certain things, like the fact that the defenses are facing China. They're not facing away, they're facing China. And it is gigantic. And so, the question comes, is this really the Great Wall of Tartary or Tartaria?
Mm-hmm. A lot of questions here, and a lot of answers that have proved to be false over the years. I mean, how many times have you seen your science book, in your grade school be rewritten? And how many times have you heard the fact checkers they're fact checking? It's just, it's going on and on and on. And at what point do we say, this is just all crap? It's not working. You guys are looking worse and worse and worse. At what point do people say, when they're, getting their PhD or, whatever title that they're going for, when do they just really eyeball it and say, is this going to be good next year? Is this information that I'm learning now going to be applicable in 6 months? Because things are just changing constantly. The story is forever evolving. And what they like to do is they like to try to make it evolved in a way that controls us, that puts us in that control matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the questions are kind of endless, but we can start to look and see, as this is another one that's talking about it, we can start to see that there is this pattern of distortion, and yet there's clues, and we tend to take things as symbolism, because in the world that we're growing up in, it's very, very different from that which was in the past. So when you see these beings that are like half human, half either bird, or half some sort of animal, or something even different that you can't quite determine what they are, there's a lot that we don't know about, and there's a lot of beings that were just completely exterminated and no longer around. Doesn't mean they weren't around in the past. These ancient books, of which we have a couple, and there was more, unfortunately, that I didn't get control of when my mom had passed on, that were pretty old, but I do have a couple that are very old. This is, and I have one that's similar to this, the flags of all nations, right? And if you just go back to some of the books, like I've uncovered in certain books that I've reordered because I've had them in the past and maybe lent them out and you never get them back, etc., etc. So you order a new one and then it's missing information and it's like, oh, new, revised, expanded. Yeah, but the good stuff has been wiped out. You know, the stuff they don't want you seeing gets wiped out. Look at this. Look at the flag of Tartary right next to China. This is a griffin next to, I think that's a dragon. Isn't that curious? Tartary. It's a country with its flag. Yeah, isn't that interesting? You know, again, there's so much that has been absolutely distorted and changed. And when we look to the way people word things, and how would indigenous people explain what a gray is? Well, remember the pelacaras, the face peelers, you know, that whole thing going on down in Brazil and in the deep jungle. Brazilian tribe members had never heard of the term aliens before, so they didn't have that concept. But when they were shown the pictures of alien gray, they recognized immediately and said, that's Mancunawabu. They live underground. And you know what else? They try to steal your soul. Ooh, that's pretty scary. You know, you see them being recognized in Australia, Aboriginal cave art too, and also Egyptian pottery, clearly, and also, you know, other places too, the Mesoamericans as well as Mesopotamia. You see depictions of grays everywhere.
Mm-hmm. You do, and I think it's really interesting that they explain them as if they're just another creature on Earth. That you know, that it's nothing unusual. We are aware of them. We know what they are doing. Just like a different kind of a bird, or just like a different predator, a very large cat, or something that could bring harm to the tribe. It's like they don't even skip a beat when they're asked about what are these aliens. No, they don't have that concept. They just have a concept of, yeah, this planet has some funky stuff.
Yeah, for them, it's not like you're not talking about myth. I mean, yeah, we know what these are, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing with descriptions of reptilians. You'll find it in all the different traditions. 1633, they weren't supposed to have rockets in 1633. This is what we mean about, you know, our history is total distortion. And we do see through the mud flood process and the never-ending wars, also pestilence, these things all go together, that there's been so many resets on a regular basis. It's a perpetual reset system. In fact, it's always ongoing during a Kali Yuga. And now we've transitioned out of the Kali Yuga, but there still is a long way to go. As the guides had said, about 11 to 15 years of kind of getting rid of the system to the degree where it controls the totality of the planet. And then it'll be a matter of where you find yourself. You know, if you're still dependent on the system and you're in the smart cities, the cell cities, yeah, you could equate that to being, you know, living inside these walled forts that we see. Your reality is one, whereas if you're out and we're talking about these people, like, who is to say, and I said this to Cindy and then she was in agreement, who is to say that when we look at these Amazon tribes, that their ancestors didn't live in smart cities? Who's to say that their ancestors didn't even fly in you know, equivalent to high-tech airplanes and even, you know, higher tech equipment, but made the choice that they got to get out of that in order to escape the control system and actually reverted back to a simple living, maybe even relearning skills that were even lost perhaps for generations. Who's to say that a lot of these tribes in Africa, in the Americas, in Asia, that are, technologically Stone Age, are not the survivors of past great resets, and simply are ones that decided to get out of the system and stay away from the technology.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that's very, very, very important. That's very important information that he picked up on, because they are taking the information from their elders, and they are explaining how dangerous certain situations are of different technologies, and they explain it in their own language to the best of their ability, because the explanations have gone on from one generation to the next, and they always change just a slight little bit. And then, we're listening to them and we think, wow, this sounds weird, but yet they have information from the stars. However, they got that from their own ancestors, and they were told not to forget certain things. So certain things are staples in their stories, very important to understand, help them survive, and don't step outside of these lines, because they know that there is certain destruction if you start going down the road of a lot of these technologies that are out there. Yes, sounds very, very tempting, because there's a lot of luxury in the way that we live right now. However, they remembered what it was like and what you had to sacrifice for that luxury, and for them, it simply wasn't worth it. So they taught their children a new way of living and say, stick to it.
So that painting with the rocket, 1633, Lagari Hassan Celebi was an Ottoman aviator who, according to a sole account written by traveler Evliya Celebi, made a successfully manned rocket flight. They say he launched a 7-winged rocket using 140 pounds of gunpowder from Sarabumu, the point below the palace in Istanbul. And he was going to talk to Jesus, and so he was going to launch into the heavens in a rocket to go talk to Jesus. Landed in the sea, swam ashore, and joked, "Oh, my Sultan, Jesus sends his regards to you." He was rewarded with silver and a ranking in the army. The leftover technology, the leftover knowledge from past civilizations often does make its way to the next civilization, as they're always trying to eliminate everything. Again, that's a big part of the wars in what we call Iraq, and in Syria, and in Afghanistan. Here you have another depiction of a human. I don't know if that's 6 feet, probably 16 to 18 foot tall giants here. And Cindy was picking up on, originally when we're talking about these beings, they were creating humans to kind of be a servant class, or modifying humans, because again, what you have to realize is when these beings got here that we call from various names. Again, Anunnaki is a catch-all phrase, which just means, those that come from out there to here. We will touch on some others, as we've talked about others too, like the Devas and the Asuras. I think that's a little bit more descriptive, in that Devas are those that follow the natural order, and they are recognized to be non-terrestrial beings. They're stellar beings, so to say, in that they come from other star systems, and often other densities, even other dimensions, higher dimensions. When we talk about the Asuras, to me, Asura equates to the Aesir, which equates to those in the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and even going over into Persia and Armenia and other areas in the Caucasus region. These are the invaders that come in and set themselves up as rulers. When we talk about the devas, those are the ones that come in, coach us, and they just kind of do their thing. They come, they go. They'll give us insights and explanations into how the universe works, how we can, utilize certain basic technologies to better our lives, but not in a way to control us. Where the asuras are all about controlling humans and using them for their benefit. They came later. The asuras came later. The ones that we recognize as the Anunnaki and the Gigi from those Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian tales, those came in our more recent past. Those came and took control over humanity in what we would call the Bronze Age period, whereas when we're talking Silver and Golden Age, we're talking interactions with more Devic beings that understand and abide by the higher laws and rules of non-interference with indigenous beings.
Mm-hmm. When I saw this, I look at the humans, and these humans feel created with too much potential, with too much understanding, with too much of an ability to ask questions. And this is something that controllers really want to avoid. They want people, they want the questions already answered, is what they want. And this is why they put us through an education, so that we don't think of these other questions we can ask. They're already answered for you. So this just did not work. And what I see is the Greys are more of an appropriate type of servant, because they go off of a hive mind. They don't have that individual soul type of energy. And now, not all Greys are created equal, because I've seen some that are actually very, very good. And I've often questioned, are these the Greys in our future that are coming back to try to tell us to hold on to your sovereignty? So I've seen both kinds. I've seen the very, very bad kind, and I've seen some very, very good kind that are actually teaching us. So we can't just look at things with one perceptive eye. We have to look at things individually for ourselves. Get that discernment going on in your heart, so you can feel when something's right and something's wrong, and you can feel when there's deceit as well, because there's plenty of that going on.
Oh, absolutely. And again, these vehicles, these bodies are not the soul. The soul inhabits the body. So when we come in, souls wait for an opportunity to have a certain experience. So again, you can have a soul that has had hundreds of thousands of incarnations in other planets and planetary systems, as well, that is waiting for a chance to have an experience on Earth, which, if you're living in this time and what's to come, you might say, why? Why would you want to? Well, again, when you have eternity, this is all learning and growing experiences. And in some ways, this is that thrill ride that might make people use a barf bag at times, so speaking. When you look to how long ago did the giants really leave? Now they'll just say, well, that's just an aberrant gene. He just has a genetic deformity. Well, again, there's been so much interbreeding going on. You gotta, people will say, well, why do we have the different races? Well, different planets. Their origin is different planetary systems, and that's the reality. Again, there were so many giant bodies unearthed in the Americas. They numbered in the hundreds of thousands and maybe even in the millions. So we can still see today, people that are obviously giants. And it's not that their pituitary glands are necessarily defective. It's that they have a different background, and they're made up of a different collection of beings. This was an extraterrestrial hub. Again, everybody, when you look at the planet, Earth is a refugee planet. We are a refugee planet. There are humanoid beings all over the entirety of our particular universe and galaxy. And so there is this intergalactic war that's ongoing, and you have people that are leaving and fleeing, looking for better shores, greener pastures on a big scale. And so especially in some times past, they would make their way here and they would integrate in with what was already here, which was a wide assortment of different extraterrestrials from different places. And this is also why we end up getting some of those beings that look like they're avian or even semi-fish or semi-reptilian or semi-animal. You have all these different depictions that we don't really always take seriously. Many won't, because, especially if you believe what the history books tell you, because it is, after all, a story. It's like when I wrote Israel yesterday, I typed it in, and for some reason, I inversed the A and the E, and I thought, wow, that's really a great thing that's right in front of our face. Is real. Is any of it really real? And then you also can do is Ra El, and see Isis, Ra and El, in that word Israel as well, from a different era. And when we talk about Isis and we talk about Osiris, we're talking about beings from the Syrian star system. Giants were real. Giants were around. And when in the Bible, when Israel goes into the land of Canaan, we look like grasshoppers to them. And the Bible makes you think that all giants are evil. Well, the reality is many of the giants were us. We were occupying those bodies at that point in time. They were vehicles that were too much of a threat to the system, so the system wiped them out and gave us what we have now. This is what the system does time and time again.
But unbeknownst to the system, they can try to make different bodies, but they cannot change the soul that goes into those bodies. They cannot change the expanded soul. So that's a problem for them. But they can educate it out of people. They can try to tell you who you are and what you're capable of. And, it's just over time, I'm sorry, it's starting to unravel. There's too many people asking questions. They don't like that. And we have something going on now where it seems like people are realizing, catching on, backpedaling in the laws and whatnot, and taking a closer look and saying, hey, I don't want this area that I live in to be exposed to these laws. And people are actually taking solid steps to change things. And I think that's one of the more beautiful things that shows our co-creative abilities and how we can support each other in how we want our area to be, where we are at. It's just starting to show that we do have the ability to reach out there and make changes. And this information that's out there is very important to get people just at least ask the question and don't just disregard it. After a while, you're not really able to disregard it. Once you've woken up to a new truth, it's been my experience. I have never been able to go back to sleep, and neither has anyone else. So what do you do? What do you do when you feel like, okay, I have all this information on me? What do I do with it? You just keep learning. You keep absorbing. It will have its time and its place, but this is for you. This is for you to figure out. This is for your journey. This is for your expansion, but most of all, it's for your remembering.
In 1965, you have Janus van Moritz discovering in the middle of nowhere across the ocean, an extensive system of underground communications of inconceivable antiquity. Gigantic branching of underground roads and tunnels stretching for thousands of kilometers, passing besides Argentina. Also under the territory of Peru and Ecuador, the walls of the tunnels were smooth and polished, the ceilings were flat and level, as if covered with a glaze. Passageways led to the vast underground halls. In one of the galleries, he discovered 20-kilogram books of thin metal sheets measuring 96 by 48 centimeters. Most surprisingly, each such page was stamped or engraved with mysterious signs, believed to be a library of a vanished ancient civilization. Yeah, this is just fabulous. This is a book page, is what they're trying to get across. How big were these people? How big were these beings? You know, it's not just over in South America, though I think South America, especially Ecuador, Peru especially, and Bolivia hold a lot of information. Cindy picks up too on Bolivia, and it's interesting too because as a 7th grader, I was asked to do an essay on pick a country, and for whatever reason, I picked Bolivia. Who in the world would pick Bolivia to go and do no offense, Bolivia, but you don't stick out. There is something about Bolivia. There is something there. I think it's a continuation of what we see and we know about in Peru. Peru is loaded with all sorts of evidence and entrance ways into the inner earth as well. When we look to Mexico and we see all those pyramids and, look at this. I mean, this looks like modern concrete construction, does it not? Next to these other blocks. It's so obvious that the history books are not even close to right. This is a little bit longer version of what we were just reading. I'll have all the links for you guys. When you look to India and you say, how could this structure, which is underground, which is solid and amazing, this is the Kailasa temple in Ellora, India. Look at how it is cut into the ground, into solid bedrock. How did they do this? Hammers and chisels? They say it was built 1,000 years ago. It feels way more ancient than that. This is what they always want to do with anything that's from the Indus Valley civilization, which predates the dark control grid, the fallen Anunnaki invasion. They always want to make the fallen Anunnaki stories seem older than these stories. But these beings were peaceful. These were some of our guides and teachers. And yes, they had incredible technology.
You know what this is? This is just somebody coming down here and wanting to show off, saying, watch what I can do, look what I can do. And this isn't the only one. There were many others. It was almost like they were in a competition. They're like, we are going to leave our mark and it is going to stay and it's going to be beautiful. And they took the right kind of pride in it. So something that's going to last forever. I mean, this is so cool that it's been saved and it's being looked at and people are able to walk through and pick up some of the energies that used to be here, some of the magnificent energies that once were just walking around here like everyone else. This person has a reason to show off. They're a brilliant architect.
Yeah, when we go back to Cusco and we go back to Peru, I mean, look at these. These came out of like a form. We actually do see much more advanced than this around the planet when we go back even farther. Yet again, it's not what we should have had available to us in the time frame that they tell us. Again, history is just a lie. And you have a Christian monastery standing on top of the Incan temple. This is what they do. And that Incan temple is standing on top of something else. It's a ley line area. It's an energy vortex area that has been usurped by the control system. And, this is a perfect example of when you look at these blocks and stuff, you'll see that the farther back in time we go, the more advanced it is.
It is. It's much more advanced. So, ask the questions. I mean, this one was a really cool one. So I sat here and I looked at this for a minute and I felt into it. And with all of these images and all of these pictures, this is amazing. This is a creation story. This is so much better than a book, just like all of them are, the energies that are at the pyramids. And when they carve these things like this into rock, you bet it's telling one heck of a story.
Now, interestingly enough, this is from the Soviet Union era, I should say. This is in the Republic of Georgia. If you really want to look to the origins of the control system that we have in place now, it comes into power post Younger Dryas cataclysm. It's after that Younger Dryas cataclysm. That was an act of war. That was an act of war that was part of the battles of the gods. This is it right here, as you can see. And it's a historic retelling of a Genesis type of scenario. This area is fascinating. It really, really is. This, again, if I had to pick two areas that I would go to, it would be Anatolia. It would be parts of Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. This is such a key area in our history. There's so much hidden here. Again, they're burying back over Göbekli Tepe because it has pre draconian invasion evidence there of interactions that were very, very benevolent between benevolent beings that were just lightly guiding and helping humanity, and then the dark control system that comes in and takes over. When you see all the bloody sacrifices that were done on the temples in Mesoamerica, and there was bloody sacrifices being done over in the Middle East as well. That's all the control system that's in place now, that's just what they operate on. They actively utilize dark demonic energies to work for them. This is really what they do. We are understanding they are the blackest of black magicians, and yet there is also a way we can utilize the forces of nature to help ourselves. And one of the things it will make I have in mind for Heart's Home, we'll talk about the elemental beings, beings that literally are maintaining your body right now. And you've been taught in Christianity to fear all the elemental beings because this is how they've also shortened our lifespan and given us poor health. They've cut us off from aspects of ourselves that, if we just look at it from a modern standpoint, we don't even think they're there. We don't know. You're not taught these things. Yet, the quote-unquote witches that were burnt, so many of them were just simply natural healers that were persecuted by this system.
Mm-hmm. And people went along with it because they really thought it was the right thing to do. They were convinced that these witches were really, really horrible, when what they were is they were a threat to the control system and nothing more than that. They were not a threat to anything else except for the control system. And if they let them just go about and spread their knowledge, boy, oh boy, how are they ever going to get anywhere that way?
Yeah, exactly. If you go out in your backyard and you learn what to pick, then there's no reason to go to a pharmacy. Yeah, it's part of the awakening. Right below Georgia, where those magnificent stones were that we were just looking at, is Armenia. And Armenia is very, very, very interesting as well. This, Armenia, apparently could be, perhaps it holds Asgard in so many ways. Asgard, you're talking, Nordic. you're talking, the Asir. Yeah, it is interesting. It's curious because it appears that after the Younger Dryas event, again, there's highlands here, there's cave systems here, there's areas here that house tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people underground. There was a spreading out of people in many different directions. Again, controlled by the control system that is now in place. The Younger Dryas event I view as the turning point in the war where the dark side started to gain control. And so the gods of Norway, Sweden, Finland, again, Denmark, etc., the ones that we know, Odin and Thor and so many of those others, perhaps were over here first and moved that way. Again, when you look at the stories, they're very, very human-like. Although, they are stronger than the typical Homo sapiens, wiser than typical Homo sapiens, kind of undefeatable in battle, yet very, very flesh and blood, and could be hurt, could be physically hurt, absolutely. And it's interesting because, Armenia, as far as dialects go and the linguistics of it, this is one of the most ancient languages we have, comes from here. And we can see that there is a commonality with the Nordic peoples. And again, making their way through parts of what right now is, war zones, Ukraine, Russia, etc., and what may soon be war zones with the Baltic nations as well. It's fascinating to see this. And I think, again, if you want to look at the battle of the Asuras, the wars of the Asuras trying to take over this world and wrest dominion over humans away from the ones that we would view as the Devic kingdom, which again didn't really rule humans, it just guided humans gently. We are looking at echoes of this with the wars of the Asir against the Vanir. And you'll have people that are scholars, it's talking about the Vanir as more like forces of nature. This is because these are beings, again, that are extraterrestrial, but they're living amongst us because everybody that came here came from somewhere else. In effect, we're all kind of extraterrestrials. We all do have extraterrestrial lineage because, again, this planet is a relatively new recreation from the remnants of a planet, that Tiamat, that was destroyed in this galactic battle. So, where did Odin come from? One of the most prominent gods, the number one in the Asir. Well, when you look to it, we can trace it back to that area again. And the Asir-Vanir War, these are extraterrestrial beings. Again, you have a history that's conceptualizing them using spears, bows and arrows. Listen and look at the wording that's used in the Hindu books, because they're talking about this war too. It's the same war that went on, and it's the war that led to the control of the dark controllers that then instituted their religious concepts through the Abrahamic tradition. Yet at the same time, if we are talking about, the pagan point of view, and again, that's been all so obfuscated and covered over and distorted, because not all these beings are the same. So, some people that have done really, really great work, fabulous work, have reached a lot more people than we have, and yet will say that, Enki is Shiva. No, you're totally missing the book. They're not the same, not even close to the same. And they're not. Like when we look at the planets and we look at the stars, you'll find that a lot of these beings will take on the naming after planets and stars also. This is one of the things they do. If you look at the formal title of, say, King Charles, and you'll see Duke of this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It goes on and on and on. This is what they do, is take on the titles of those that went before them. And so even when we're talking about Enki and Lil and Anu, again, now the reference point for them and what they are is very different than what it was in times past. And yet it in itself could be a usurpation of what was designated as a native form of energy, an original form of a natural energy or flow. And I might have lost some of you guys on that, but that's like a deeper topic into more of this distortion. Let's just say that, again, when they take over another kingdom, they take the title of that kingdom that they're usurping. They take on the titles that all those beings, had given to them for themselves. This is where it becomes a distortion, because you will even see, for those that have done the research, that Marduk apparently usurps everything that Enki had. Yes, now Marduk in the being that we take as Enki, those are of the same type, in that these are part of the draconian fallen Anunnakian alliance, the ones that we would call the Asir. But again, very, very different than, say, a being like Osiris or Isis. Again, Osiris and Isis, these are beings that come from the Sirius star system. We see most of what we have impacting us on planet Earth is coming either from Orion, the Orion, and the Draconian systems. We have the Pleiades, and then we have Sirius. But there's many, many others. There are beings here from places like Andromeda and many other places.
It's definitely a mix of information and a mix of beings. And, when we do read the history books, I think it's important to develop that ability to read between the lines, to look at it and understand that this has been changed in a way. Read between the lines and pick up that information that's there that is really true. And it takes some time. It takes some discernment. What your two eyes see logically is far different than what energy is picked up in that third eye. That third eye development is so important, because you can look at pictures, you can look at writings, you can look at books, and there's what the two eyes see, and then you read between those lines, and then you get that information that's deep inside of there, that information that's being covered up by someone deliberately or someone not so deliberately. You can get that information and you can absorb it and you can understand it and you can get the truth. And we were built after these different types of beings, and we have these abilities, and they don't like that. They watch people who are developing these abilities, and they put one little trap after the next, and it takes some time to become good and solid and understand the system that you live in and how to avoid these little, tripwires and stuff, because it can be difficult when you're someone who sees and feels different things, but the system is presenting itself in a way that you have to react in another certain way. And if you don't, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be looked at as a very strange individual, somebody that probably needs help. And there is an element of self-control that needs to be applied when you can see through the system. So that right now, when we're in this age that we are in, we still have to work with it. It's not like we can completely ignore it and just tromp on. We can't. We are here, and we came here for a reason, and there's no reason to completely ignore our ability to change the system, because we have that ability too.
So now I'm going to tie back to the original thought that I started all this with. When we look to the Roman system, that is still the seer, that's the fallen Anunnaki, that's the system that comes through to us through Babylon, Sumeria, Akkadia, what we would call Persia, what we would also say as modern Armenia and Georgia, Azerbaijan, this Caucasus region. Although it doesn't necessarily mean, again, that root word of a certain race that it comes from the Caucasus region. These again are those systems that are coming through, and in effect, is what we can also call and have called fallen Pleiadians, because in many cases these beings were fighting the system and then they gave in to the system. When you see the Romans and their depictions of the gladiators fighting all sorts of different creatures, this was sport. This is who these beings are. They view war as sport. They view it as entertainment. They play chess, so to speak, with their armies, which is us. In so many ways, when you look at World War III and 1 and 2, this is chess for them, and they view this so lightly, and they do not value life. So when you see these acts going on with bears and lions and tigers and all sorts of beings in armed combat, and then they give the thumbs up or the thumbs down, that's totally how they view humanity. That's how they view the world. That's how they view everything. When we started out talking about the dinosaur tracks and the human footprint, so they gave me a vision this week where I was seeing what looked to me like a being in one of those Mesoamerican depictions of it wasn't flying high, it was actually hovering very, very low. And it actually, interestingly enough, almost looked like it was made out of stone, but it was piloted by what I felt to be, again, Anunnaki, fallen Anunnaki, Assyrian, Asura. And again, when we say Assyria, too, that again is going to take us back to the control system. This being was hunting down humans, and it was actually using what looked to be like raptors to be its kind of like hunting dogs to find the humans. And so that was a vision that they gave me this week, and it feels like that was a past reset point. We have gotten information like this in the past. We haven't talked about it much, but there's been many resets. They have utilized things that would be very scary in the past to hunt down and to get rid of the remnants of whatever it was that they wanted to wipe out, in order to then reintroduce more controllable versions later. This is what the system does. This timing is the changing of a Yuga. So, this is a little different in that their power is more limited, but they will still do what they can to control the narrative for as long as they can.
Ultimately, you have to find a place that you can trust, a place where you can express your emotions that is completely safe, because this is how you develop. This is your self-development that can take you to higher levels. And animals, they're not animals. They are absolutely angels sent from heaven, and in some cases, family members that may be incarnated in a different body, but it is pure love nonetheless.
So, what is the takeaway? It's up to humanity to realize we are being manipulated by outside forces that have divided us. We're all refugees from other places when you really get down to it. If you go back lineage-wise, many different worlds. We're all looking for a more peaceful life and a purposeful existence in which we can really expand on our co-creative abilities. We are all creators in training, and it's a matter of choosing what we want to create. Yet at the same time, if we think we can ignore the system and it's going to go away, well, that's not going to happen. You're not going to change anything by ignoring a system. You may be able to shift your frequency so that you can personally escape it. But then again, the starseed light workers, of which make up a huge portion of the population that are here to help with this transition, your purpose is something different. You're here to help awaken those that have been slumbering, and to let them know that, no, you are not born into a concept like original sin. There's no need for any sort of blood sacrifice. You are actually magnificent creative beings in training.
And love is that expression. Love is that co-creative ability that we all have inside of us. It's been so distorted. It has been so twisted. The true love, the innocent love, the precious love, the most important love, the solid love. That's what we need to open our hearts to, because that's what helps create. That's what helps move things. That's what creates the waves of this creation that we really want to move. We really want to move to that, and we have to figure out a way to heal those heart chakras. The heart chakra is key. It is everything, and our animals help us heal that.
Absolutely, as they are certainly vibrating so much higher than the control system. Source bless. Look forward to your comments. Namaste.
Namaste.